In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
بس الناس وقفت هيصلوا. Okay, right. Arabic or English or both? Is it still good morning? Maybe it's not, but good morning, good afternoon. And we just want to say thank you so much for having Leaving the Jar come and spend this weekend with you. Thank you, fathers, for inviting us. And we are so grateful. I know it's not easy to give up part of your Saturday or all of your Saturday to come, but I hope you get to learn a lot and to find even more exciting opportunities for service. I just want to take the time to introduce the group. So our group is from Leaving the Jar, and we'll explain what that word means and why we have that name. But very quickly, as an introduction of names, Manel, one of the co-founders, Isaac, the other co-founder, and then we'll just go around and people just introduce their names. We want you to know our names, so in case you have a question, you want to reach out to any of us, it's very easy.
Hi, I'm Maryse.
Hi, I'm Nermeen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carol.
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Colleen.
Brian.
Isaac.
Christina.
Okay, so that was just a quick introduction of names, but we will give you more about who we are, why we're here, and we get started right after.
Hi, so if you were with us yesterday, we went over the QR code, but I'm gonna be a little bit clearer about what's on this. So if you guys notice, there's gonna be a QR code on the slides. It's also on your name tag. It's also on the flyer. This QR code would lead you to different things. It leads over here to this link tree. So here is just a list of like different websites and different links that we're gonna use throughout the day. The first one is if you did not get a chance to sign up or sign in, please register. The reason we have you guys register is we like to just keep track of how many people attended these just for our data for us to make this better. We like to send you guys emails and updates. So that's the reason that we have you guys register. The second one is the workshops. Today at around 3:30, we're going to be splitting up into different workshops. I'll touch more on those. So when that's time, that's what you'll be clicking on. The third one, this one is really important. The topic today is kind of heavy. It's kind of confusing. So a lot of questions can come up. And sometimes if you don't feel comfortable or there's no time to ask the question in the session, that's okay. You just can go here and you can ask the question there, or even if you just have a comment or a concern, you can ask it here. You can, if you put your name to let us know if you want to talk to one of us or if you want us to address you directly, you can put your name. But if you don't want to put your name, if you want it to just be an anonymous question, you don't have to put your name. And we are keeping track of those questions and we'll try to answer them as the day goes. So this one is here. Again, it's on the QR code. At the end of the day, we will really appreciate it if you guys give us your feedback on the session. I'll touch on that later. And I'll touch on our website and the events later, just so I'm not overwhelming you right now. Right now, registration and the questions are the most important things. Okay. A little bit about us, if you don't know who we are. Like Tosoni said, we are called Leaving the Jar, and we're a nonprofit organization. We used to be called Mission for Christ. We launched in 2003, and our mission is to fight against human trafficking. And it's a huge word, it's a huge thing, but the reason we have this is because it happens, and it happens every day, and it happens all around us, here in every community, and that's where, and we're going to tell you stories, and you're going to understand why this started. And we do it in we have two parts of this mission. We have the part where we want to give people, the victims, a way out of this life, and we'll tell you about that. And then we also just want to raise awareness, just so we don't have victims to begin with. And when we educate people and when we raise awareness, we help just shine a light. So we do prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation. So like we said, we are based in America, Egypt, Kenya, and Zambia. And it looks a little bit different in each country. In Zambia and Kenya, back then our prevention used to look like going out in the street and finding prostitutes and bringing them in. Right now, it's by word of mouth, and they come into our program. In our program, we have intervention where they go through like a rehabilitation thing. They like attend Bible studies, they get counseling. We also help start different like job projects for them, so that there's a way for them to make an income, so then they have like a practical way to make it out of prostitution or to make it out of their life and to be independent. And so far we've supported over 300 women. Right now, today, we are actually in the process of doing a new intake where we have our servants out in the street finding new women. So please, please pray for them. If you ever happen to go on a mission trip to Zambia and Kenya, you might run into our project. In Egypt, Egypt is close to all of our hearts. This one looks a little bit different. So in Egypt, a lot of the survivors or victims, or not even survivors or victims, just people who are like at risk, happen to be youth, and Christian youth in particular. So in Egypt, we focus a lot on intervention and prevention, or prevention and intervention. So what that looks like is youth who are at risk. They sign up for our program, and they get a scholarship to finish their college, to finish their education. Because a lot of times, not finishing education in Egypt can lead to bad things. It can happen for a woman to end up in an early marriage, or a young man to accept a fake job offer in some resort in Ghardaa, and then he gets lost. So we help them finish their education that way. Is that? And along with that, every single year, we host a conference where all of our participants come to this conference in the first week of September, and they get to learn different skills of how to protect themselves, how to know when a job offer is fake, how to find different jobs, how to have professional skills, how to have emotional and mental skills to take care of themselves, how to like not let depression fight them, but they can stand strong and not fall into different traps. So this conference is in the first week of September, and the reason I'm going over it is because we have a surprise with that later. So that's Egypt. With Egypt, we also just started intake of like case by case, like special cases on the streets, so that also needs prayer. And then the US. Fun fact that we're going to go over today is that the US is the #1 consumer of human trafficking, and therefore it is in huge need of this. So in the US, we have two things going on. In Northern Virginia, where we're from, we are in the process of licensing a house to take in young victims, like kids under 12, where it'll be like a shelter for them. So please pray for the licensing of that house. It's a huge project. We're kind of scared. So please pray for us as that house is getting licensed and as that project starts. On the other side, we have these awareness trainings. Tassoni always says the sentence of, you can save 20 people, but at the same time that you're taking to save those 20 people, thousands others just fell into the trap. And that's why awareness is so key. And that's why we started the Free in Truth training. That's what you guys are doing today. And that's what we do. So we go around to different communities to give this training, just to open eyes, to make sure that we are equipped and that we are aware of this horror. So with that, with this training, we just want to like make sure that you guys are like transforming your understanding, and you're beginning to understand what this is. You're going to recognize the signs. We're going to come together and come up with solutions, and we're going to know how to take action. And we don't want to end with darkness. There's hope. And that's what we're going to equip you guys with, and we're going to end with hope, because there is hope. With this, like I said earlier, the topic today is heavy. It's sensitive. الموضوع النهاردة تقيل. في حاجات صعبة إن هي تتسمع. If you are having a hard time to process, please feel free to take a break or to talk to any of us. We have Mary here is a therapist, if you need to. لو الموضوع صعب عليك أو مش عارف إن أنت تكمل ومحتاج إن أنت تاخد بريك, feel free إنه تاخد بريك أو تكلم حد من التيم. بس. Okay, is that good? And with that, I'm going to switch it over to Tasoni.
ايه رأيكم نكمل بالعربي ولا انجليزي؟ That was good Arabic, Maurice. Actually, I was confused. I was like, who's talking? You caught me by surprise. Okay. So if you were with us from yesterday, we said that while we're doing this, we're going to be talking about different touches or different encounters with Christ, and it will match exactly with the awareness topics. And especially that we are in the season of Lent. The church was very wise to choose certain stories in the Sundays of Lent. So yesterday we talked about the touch of compassion, and we took the example of the Samaritan woman. All she needed was someone to really see her, hear her, give her compassion, give her the respect as a person. And then her whole life was transformed when she felt and saw that in Christ. And that's really where our name comes from. Leaving the jar comes from the story of the Samaritan woman when she met Christ and she felt his touch. She left the burden and she transformed her life. Now, another thing that also Christ... Arabic and English? Oh, wow, okay. طيب احنا يعني امبارح اتكلمنا على يعني تعاملات ربنا مع ناس مختلفة في حياتهم وازاي قدر يغير حياتهم من التعاملات دي، لأن هو جه على الأرض عشان يغيرنا كلنا، صح؟ عشان يخلصنا كلنا. فامبارح اتكلمنا على أنا مش عارفة يعني إيه compassion. إيه؟ التعاطف. يعني امبارح هو ازاي ربنا قدم تعاطف من ضمن العمل ده مع السامرية، وازاي ما عملهاش زي ما الناس التانية عملتها، ولكن عملها على انها انسانة تستحق ان حد يكلمها، يسمعها، يشوفها، يحترمها، وده غير حياتها كله. وده الاسم بتاعنا اللي هو leaving the jar، بيجي من قصة السامرية، ان هي لما المسيح قابلها كده كإنسانة سابت كل ده وغيرت حياتها. Today we're going to talk about the touch of forgiveness. يعني مش هو كان بيقول ايه وكان يقول يصنع خيرا؟ عملوا ازاي؟ عملوا عن طريق تعاملاتهم مع الناس. احنا بنتعلم منه، يعني احنا في الخدمة بنتعلم من الانكاونترز بتاعت كريست. So touch of forgiveness, there are so many examples. One of them is the prodigal son، صح؟ مش احنا بنقرا ده برضو في الصيام؟ في الثالث، صح؟ Another one برضو is the prodigal son. Another one is the woman caught in adultery. Right? So المرأة الخاطئة. في الحالتين على فكرة انتوا عارفين هم كان نفسهم في ايه؟ Really all they desired, not even, they just wanted to survive. يعني الابن الضال كان نفسه بس يلاقي مكان ينام وياكل عشان يعرف يعيش. He didn't dream for more than that. Like the prodigal son didn't dream for more than just surviving, a piece of bread, a bed. For the woman caught in adultery, she was going to die. She was going to be stoned. So all she really hoped for was to live, even if they cast her out. But when Christ came, he didn't just allow them to live. He restored their life. He allowed them to thrive through the touch of forgiveness. يعني هو في حياة الاثنين دول ما اداهمش بس اللي كان نفسهم فيه ان هم يعيشوا، بالعكس ده رد لهم حياتهم، اداهم حياة يعني ما كانوش اصلا يحلموا بيها عن طريق ان هو سامحهم. يعني كان في forgiveness، كان في تسامح. ولو لاحظتوا حاجة مع الاثنين دول، المسيح لمس، يعني he really physically touched them. right? With the prodigal son, he touched him, and the father hugged him. With the woman caught in adultery, he touched her, okay? Now, I want to share with you just something about Saint Baisa. Do you guys know the story of Saint Baisa? لا very quickly, مفيش وقت، ماريس هتموتني. Okay, so basically the story of Saint Baisa, this was way back, also closer to the Roman time. She was from a very good Christian family. They used to give to the poor, to give to the churches and support many people. The parents died, she continued to serve, but there was no income, so she ran out of money and she started to borrow money. And when she borrowed money, that put her in debt. Well, the thing that you don't know about in that time, if you write a debt or if you sign a debt, and now you become almost the property of the country or the property of the Romans. So if you can't fulfill the debt, they have the right to either take you in prison, enslave you, torture you, even to the point of cutting. They can just cut. They can cut their hand or whatever they want until they pay the debt. Or they can take their family members. So for her, it was not a choice. So in order to survive, the idea was to go ahead and start a business. Well, this girl didn't know what to start. So some of her friends suggested, well, let's have parties. Give people some fun. And her house turned into a house of prostitution. Well, the monastery heard about what happened. So they sent one of the fathers, his name is John the Short because he was short. So they said, go, we can't wait, and let her destroy herself. And we know she's in a bad situation, so we really have to help. Go and speak with her. When he went to speak to her, she was shocked that he came to her house, and he said, I want to see only Baisa. I don't want to see any of the girls. Remember, it's a house of prostitution, girls, adultery. So he said, I want to see Baisa. When he went to see Baisa, she looked at him and she was shocked. Father, Abuna, you are here for me? There is no hope for me. Why are you here? And he looked at her. And you know what she asked? She asked that question. She said, is there a forgiveness for me? That's all she asked. And all he said, yes, but not in this place. And immediately, she left the house, she left the business, she left everything and went with her. So basically what I'm trying to say, because you're going to learn about this, the people who are caught in trafficking, it's not because they want to, it's not because their choice, it's not because they want to be that way, but things happen that made them that way. Things happened that made them that way. يعني زي من قصة القديسة بائسة هي لما كل فلوسها خلصت واستلفت السلف اللي خدته والصك اللي مدته على نفسها، ده بالتالي اسمه صك بالعربي، ان ده كان نهايته لا اما السجن لا اما ان هي الرومان هياخدوها لا اما هيعملوا فيها اي حاجه. يعني كانوا حتى ممكن عندهم استعداد يعذبوهم ويقطعوهم يعني، فما كانش عندها حل تاني. فلما تسمعوا القصص النهارده من فضلكم عايزين نسمع with the touch of forgiveness. انا محتاجة إن حد يسامحني، أنتوا محتاجين حد يسامحكم، كل يوم بنغلط. فخلينا نركز إن زي ما المسيح إدانا الغفران، هو طالب مننا إن إحنا ندي نفس الحاجة لأخويا اللي جنبي، لأختي اللي جنبي، للغريب، للي بره. فقبل ما نحكم على حد تعالوا نفتكر دي. Before judgment, let's offer forgiveness. Okay? Thank you. And now we're going to start the next session of the training. And this will be Brian.
I'm sorry I can't give you any Arabic, but John will help me with that.
أنا هترجم لبراين على قد ما أقدر يعني.
Please forgive my raspy voice. Virginia is coated in pollen, and it really got spring allergies going for me.
معلش صوتي غريب شوية عشان فيرجينيا مليانة بولن من الشجر. مش أنا هو.
Oh, you have the okay. That's right. Yep.
There you go.
Okay. These are some of the, actually, these numbers are now 2 years old. The illicit revenue from human trafficking hit $347 billion in 2023, more than double the widely quoted $150 billion mark. For perspective, that's nearly as much as Apple's global revenue of $385.6 billion, and greater than all 10 of the largest American companies by revenue.
المشكلة اللي احنا هنتكلم فيها النهاردة اللي هي الترافيكينج بتاعت يعني تحرك الناس وكده اللي بياخدوهم يخلوهم يشتغلوا بالعافية أو يعملوا جنس بالعافية والحاجات ديت. المشكلة ديت بتمثل 347 بليون دولار في السنة. يعني ده المكسب اللي يعني نقدر نقول ده المكسب بتاع البيزنس دوت 347 بليون في السنة، وده أكتر من مكسب أو قريب لمكسب شركة أبل في العالم كله.
But if you're unilingual, my brain doesn't work this way. Like, I already lost track. Is there a way we could do it all in one language and then just...
You want to do the whole presentation in one language and then go back?
Or even by parts, and then
Sure.
repeat the whole thing in another language, so that you're just focused. I can't
Sure.
focus like this.
Which section?
Yeah, and then then
Sure.
translate.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, you jump in whenever you want to. Okay, so what the point of that number is human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, is quickly becoming the largest illicit business in the world by far, because you can sell a drug one time, you can sell a human being a dozen times a day. So it is it's for the traffickers, it's simple math. And that is why it is taking over the drug trade as the most powerful illicit business in the world. This is just a map showing where Illinois stands in the known instances of trafficking, and I stress known because much of what is happening in this country is unknown. It is unreported, and that shows where you guys stand in the human trafficking across the country. America is the #1 consumer of trafficked sex on the planet. We have the money and the time and lack of restriction, and it is becoming, because of the internet, we are the largest consumer by far. So that number there, 12 to 14 years old, is the average age that a person enters the sex trade. And remember, we're telling you this stuff not because we think it's necessarily happening in your church, but because it's very, it's necessary as followers of Christ to understand what the people out there in this world around us are dealing with. These are things that are happening right in your own neighborhoods. I guarantee you we can walk from here to places where sex trafficking is happening. And I don't know this area at all. That's how common it is. Because of the internet, because of online porn, it is everywhere. So 12 to 14 years is the average age that a person, and it's not just girls, enters the sex trade. Estimated 42 million adult survivors of sexual abuse living in the United States today. That number is also probably low because it goes unreported. And nearly half of that is from a family member. 94% of sex trafficking victims were victims of childhood sexual abuse. It almost always starts that way. If you want to ask the question, why would a young girl or a young boy allow themselves into this world? That's it right there, because it is what they know from little up. I've heard stories in person from people who started being trafficked by their own parents starting from the age of 8, 9, 10 years old. And in the modern world, with a phone, it is easy to coordinate and very, very easy to hide. So that is how the average trafficking, the stuff we see in the movies, that actually distorts the view of a girl being snatched off the street by organized crime and forced into a brothel somewhere. That does happen. I don't know if you actually saw in the news last year, there was a 14-year-old girl who went to a Dallas Mavericks basketball game with her father. She went to the restroom, and she was walked out of there by a woman who got to her in the restroom, walked her out of there, and she was gone. And they found her 2 weeks later in a hotel in a rough part of town being trafficked online. That's how quickly it happens. But that is the rare case. More often, it is someone who has a history of sexual abuse, and it has been normalized, and it is all they know. So keep that in mind when we're dealing with people out in the world and we think, how in the world do you allow yourself to fall into this? That's how. Because if it's all I know, and if it's what I think I'm worth, it's very, very easy to continue on that road because it's all I think I can get. Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. There are more slaves in the modern world than any time in U.S. history. I know that slavery is a big subject in our politics, but that's not the kind of slavery we're talking about. Slavery across the world is actually on the rise, in which human beings are controlled and exploited for profit. Perpetrators use force, fraud, and coercion, that's the legal definition, to manipulate and establish control over individuals. So, just real quickly, force is pretty obvious ones. Literally, I impose my will on you through superior strength or weapons, things like that. Fraud often happens with, of course, lying to someone. Often it is a promise of a job. So a woman, say a young woman or a teenage girl, will be brought over from another country with a promise of a job as a nanny or working in a restaurant or something like that. And then her passport is confiscated and she ends up in a brothel to pay off the debt that Tassoni mentioned. The debt bondage is still very, very clear, very, very common in this country. That need to be, okay. And then there is, of course, coercion, where that is the threat often of force. The threat of force, the threat that I will hurt you, and therefore you're going to do what I say to do. This is just a quick case study of a young girl who meets someone with online gaming. I don't know if you have teenagers in church who do online gaming, Roblox and certain platforms like that. Anywhere there's an internet connection where a stranger can make contact, it's possible for these types of things to happen. Yeah, okay. So basically what often happens is it's a young girl or a young boy who is approached by someone who is posing as someone, a peer, someone of their other age group, someone as a young girl who maybe needs someone to pay attention to them. Maybe no one's paying attention to them at home. And so with a lot of compliments and gifts and praise, he gets her to compromise by sending him a picture. And then the picture can be used as blackmail for getting her to do things that she never in a million years imagined she would do. So there's two main forms, sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Sex trafficking is the crime of using force, fraud, and coercion to induce another individual to sell sex. This is usually done in pornography, illicit massage, brothels, which, by the way, a brothel doesn't necessarily have to be something that is seen as a brothel. It can be in a residential home. It can be an apartment. There were stories in our news just a few months ago in our area in Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C. There was a regular residential apartment building where several of the apartments were being used for trafficked women. And powerful businessmen and politicians in the area were the buyers. This is basically a call girl service happening in a residential apartment building. This is not what you would think of as you'd look at the building and you think, oh, that's a brothel. That's not the kind of thing we're talking about. We're talking about regular suburban America where this type of happening. And of course, there's labor trafficking. Is a crime of using force, fraud, or coercion to induce another individual to work for or provide service. Common types: agricultural, domestic work, restaurants, cleaning services, and carnivals. You want to play it? Sorry, I'm waiting for instructions.
هنرجع تاني ونعيد الحتة دي. هنرجع تاني ونعيد الحتة دي بالعربي. هنبدأ بشوية أرقام. السن اللي الأطفال من وهم صغيرين بيبدأوا جدا ممكن يخشوا في العالم ده من وهم بيبقوا صغيرين، ممكن الافريج أو المتوسط من سن 12 ل 14. ده المتوسط، ده الوسط. ده معناها ان بيبقى في اطفال اصغر من كده بكتير ممكن كمان يخشوا في العالم ده، ممكن من سن، بنسمع حاجات غريبة جدا من 5 و6 و7 و8 سنين يعني للأسف. وممكن طبعا وهم أكبر بتحصل لغاية الكوليدج، وممكن كمان بيبقى في ناس كبيرة، مش شرط يعني الموضوع مش متوقف ان هم يكونوا أطفال، بيبقى ممكن يبقى في ستات ورجالة سواء في كنيسة أو برا كنيسة أو في أي حتة، كبار بيشتغلوا عندهم عائلات عندهم أطفال، ممكن برضو يخشوا جوه العالم ده. بس عامة الموضوع بيبدأ في ساعة الطفولة. في 42 مليون في 42 مليون سرفايفر، يعني ناس اوريدي خرجوا من العالم ده، كانوا مستعبدين وكانوا يعني اتباعوا في تجارة البشر وكل الحاجات دي وخرجوا من العالم ده. في أمريكا بس في 42 مليون ضحايا، بس نحمد ربنا ان هم عرفنا نخرجهم. و 94 معلش العربي مكسر سنة بسيطة. 94% من الناس اللي موجودين في العالم ده في تجارة البشر كانوا هم أساساً ضحايا من sexual abuse. ده معناها إنه ممكن وهم كانوا صغيرين في حد تعرض لهم أو حد اتحرش بيهم أو كده هو. فده مش معناها إن أي حد حصل له الحاجة دي هيخش necessarily هيخش في تجارة البشر أو كده هو، لكن الأغلبية اتعرضوا للحاجات دي قبل كده. فدي حاجة مهمة إن إحنا لازم نخلي بالنا منها، الناس اللي حوالينا بيتعرضوا لإيه، وده ممكن يسبب إن هم مع مدى الوقت ممكن يتعرضوا لإيه تاني. اوكي. ف تجارة البشر عامة بتحصل ان الناس بتبقى في السيتويشن اللي هم فيها بسبب 3 حاجات. الناس اللي بتعرضهم او الناس اللي بتبيعهم they trap them، بيحبسوهم بطريقة معينة. مش دايما بتكون طريقة حبس ان هم موجود في بيت، لكن بيستخدموا طرق معينة ان هم يخلوهم موجودين، يفضلوا تحت الكنترول بتاعهم. فأول حاجة force معناها إن هم بيجبروهم، بس بيجبروهم بطرق غريبة أو جديدة. فأول حاجة بيستخدموها إن هم يجبروهم إن هم بيخلوهم يعتمدوا عليهم بكذا طريقة. فممكن أول حاجة طريقة عاطفية، إن هو بيديهم حنان أو بيديهم حب أو بيديهم حاجات كتيرة جدا إن الشخص ده بيكون محتاجها، فبيخلي إن البني آدم اللي هو البنت دي مثلا تبقى معتمدة عليه. Okay.
I can summarize very quickly. You're doing great. بس الوقت مش هيكفي. Yeah. Okay. So Abuna, total English, or you want us at the end of every session to give a couple of sentences? Total English? Okay. Yeah. I was surprised. I didn't know about these talents, by the way. Very talented.
It sounded like she was doing really great.
forcing undocumented Mexican immigrants to work in their construction business. Prosecutors released a photo of a rifle seized from the home of Agustin Arias Lopez. Prosecutors say he and his brother Juan forced immigrants to work long hours every day. Investigators tell us the brothers also forced the immigrants to pay them rent to live in an unfurnished Englewood basement, threatening violence if they did not pay. The brothers are due in court on Monday. New at 4:30, two brothers from Chicago are charged with forcing undocumented Mexican immigrants to work in their construction business. Prosecutors released a photo of a rifle seized from the home of Agustin Arias Lopez.
It breaks my heart. Like, are you kidding me? Next door?
A human trafficking ring busted, 5 suspects arrested, and 10 victims recovered.
It spans several communities, but started in St. Charles, and that's where we find Elizabeth Matthews tonight.
The investigation began this spring with a tip that a brothel was just up the street from the police station.
You never know. You don't know who your neighbors are.
But Wednesday morning, neighbors in St. Charles knew something was up when police arrived.
They parked on the other side of the building. They were ski masked up, and they went in, and we just didn't know what they was going in there for.
A large-scale human trafficking ring now halted after St. Charles police found evidence of trafficking in an apartment near North 15th and Brook Streets.
For it to be so close to home and not to be aware of what's going on and going around you, it's scary.
It was like an onion. The more we peeled it back, the more it stunk. And this is something that's prevalent in society, and society can't tune a deaf ear to it.
The St. Charles police chief says 5 suspects are accused of bringing female victims in their 20s and 30s from South America to the U.S. for sex trafficking purposes. Officers quickly realized that other residential areas, mostly apartments, were involved all over the Chicago area.
10 total victims were recovered. There was about 2 or so victims at each of the locations I mentioned, and each of those victims were taken into protective custody.
1 woman and 4 men now face several Class X felonies like trafficking and promoting prostitution.
A lot of times when law enforcement goes in, especially if they focus on this for what the victim is doing and they consider it a sex act and they charge them with prostitution, all that causes is the traffickers to get up and go into a different location.
The Kane County State's Attorney says the officers' work in this case was monumental, focusing on the traffickers, which will likely result in more suspects arrested and victims rescued. The 5 current suspects are being held on $5 million bond. Reporting Elizabeth Matthews, Fox 32, Chicago.
That's an example of what I was talking about, of it hiding in plain sight right in people's neighborhoods. And the thing that she mentioned at the end about how they arrested the traffickers this time and not the women, that's actually very new. John will tell you from his experience as a police officer that the way the laws are written and the way law enforcement works, it almost always is arresting the woman for prostitution and not touching the trafficker, because of this erroneous belief that this is all voluntary. So here, to me, is the fuel to the fire. It is pornography. Since the internet has become so widespread, pornography goes everywhere instantly. I'm 52, and I didn't see my first cell phone until I was in my 20s. So when I was growing up, pornography was only available through very, very specific and limited ways. And we all know what they were. They were magazines and videotapes and things like that. Now, with this computer, an 8-year-old boy can see more sex in 1 hour than the average man from 50 years ago could see his entire lifetime. And so what that often does, and definitely does, is it fuels addiction and all kinds of descents into the kind of darkness that many of us can't even imagine. You Abunas, you deal with the dark side of things and the spiritual warfare side of things all the time. This is every bit the spiritual warfare side. This gets very, very dark and very, very demonic very, very quickly. So because trafficking is a business, it's treated as one. With more demand comes more supply, just like everything you hear in basic economics about a supplier at a grocery store. If there's more demand for milk, they find more milk. If there's more demand for sex and for the darker stuff, that is exactly what they'll find. If there's more demand for children, that's exactly what they'll find. There aren't nearly enough volunteers for this kind of stuff. So that's why pornography almost always is trafficking.
Porn and trafficking are inextricably connected. There's really no way to know if someone who's engaging in porn, whether or not they're under third-party control, if there is a pimp or a trafficker working behind the scenes, because often that's the case. So a person might show up to a set and maybe seem like they're completely there by choice, but if there's a force, fraud, and coercion going on behind the scenes that brought them to that point, there's no way of really knowing that. Trafficking is a supply and demand issue. When there are not enough people that are willing to participate in the commercial sex industry by choice to meet the demand, then demand will be met by any means necessary, including force, fraud, and coercion. 84% of people in prostitution are under third-party control, being pimped or trafficked. And the reason that's connected to porn is this. 49% of those people say, I was filmed without my consent while engaging in prostitution. The other piece is this, is that at the end of the day, what happens for many people who are just ensnared by sexual addiction and watching pornography is they come to a point where they want to act out these fantasies. That if they don't have a partner, there's no one there to act them out with. And even if they do have a partner, often their partner might be opposed to participating in something that's a fantasy that they discovered in porn. And so that drives them to see people who are in prostitution, 84% of whom are under third-party control. You know, a lot of people would even say that they're there by choice, but then, you know, things start to get really dicey when you start looking at some of the coercive practices that are happening in porn. So maybe a person says, yes, I am choosing, maybe they say, I am choosing to be in porn. And they say, here are the boundaries and parameters that I'm comfortable with. It is very, very common for, you know, someone to be hired for a job and be told that it's one thing and have the bait and switch happen. And when they get to the set, they're being asked to do things that are outside of their boundaries and comfort zone. And then often threatened, basically they're put in a position where they're coerced into doing things that are outside of their boundaries. So even that idea of choice can become very sticky and very gray just because of some of the coercive practices in porn.
احنا مش هنترجم، يعني مش هنترجم حاجة بالعربي، بس النقطة دي مهمة قوي. قصة انه البورن accessible جدا في الموبايلات اللي في ايد ولادكم او في الكمبيوتر. الاعلانات اللي بتيجي بين اليوتيوب، لو طفل معاه تليفون وداس عليها راح في حتة تانية. ولو انتوا فاكرين واحدة من السلايدز اللي قبل كده بتقول 94% من الكيسز اللي بتدخل في السكة دي بيبقى عندها history of sexual abuse. السكشوال ابيوز مش لازم يكون حد تعرض لحتى اعتداء، ممكن يبقى اتفرج على ويب سايت او حصل اكسس لاي حته من البورن والولاد بيشير مع بعض في المدارس لينكات وويب سايت يتفرجوا على حاجات. ده ممكن احنا بنعتبره بارت من السكشوال ابيوز. فحبيت بس اقول الحته دي بالعربي لانها مهمه قوي. وان انتوا تتابعوا برضو مع الجروب ازاي تعملوا فلترز على التليفونات بتاعه الولاد والكمبيوترات، لان ده جزء من كل الضلمه دي. فانا بس حبيت اتكلم عنها.
I'm told I'm running out of time by the boss. So basically the point is pornography is exploitation, pornography is trafficking. Even if those participating were voluntary, it often comes from people who were sexually exploited as children. So I just wanted to show you that graph. These are brain scans. The one on the left is a healthy, functional brain, and that's kind of a heat map of electrical activity in the brain. The one in the middle is a scan of a brain after a lifetime of heroin addiction. The one on the right is after a lifetime of pornography addiction. It is exactly the same physical effect as a heroin addict or a cocaine addict. And that is something that very, very few people understand, especially with the young people being able to access it digitally, because you can see so much for so long. It is taking over the lives and minds of our young people. And not just our young people, our old people too. Men in their 80s are not immune to this. So 90% of non-consensual acts involve trafficking victims. A significant percentage of porn content involves trafficking, exploitation, or non-consensual acts. I could get so much further into this. I don't have time in this. It wouldn't be appropriate in this setting. But it gets very, very deep and very, very dark and very, very satanic. I do want to say, Marie's mentioned that there would be hope. I wanted to say one thing about that. Whether it is your own sons and daughters or other people's sons and daughters out there, there's a 3-word antidote to this that goes a long way. I love you. I don't know what that is in Arabic, but I'm sure you can get it. And I don't mean talking about the love of Christ, although that's obviously vital. I mean, I, the father, love you, the daughter, and I'm willing to tell you, and I'm willing to show you, and I'm willing to be there and watch over you. You guys do community better than anybody I've ever seen. One of the things I loved about the Coptic Orthodox Church is how you do community, how you look out for each other. The country you're in doesn't do it well. We got millions of young girls growing up without fathers. And I can tell you that in interviews with former child sexual predators who have been caught, one of the things they always say when they were looking for a victim was there a male figure who was nearby and paying attention? That was what he was looking to avoid when he was looking for a victim. So the other thing I will tell you is, if you listen to testimonials of women who have been in pornography or in the sex trade and gotten out, one of the common themes you will hear is, I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be loved. They say it all the time. They wanted a father, a mother, somebody to say, I love you, and to show them. And the number of young people growing up in this country without that will break your heart and blow your mind. So this is not just about your own church and your own kids, although obviously it is. I beg you to love your daughters extravagantly, all the way, especially men. Love your daughters extravagantly, because they must hear it from you. Women, you do nurturing, awesome. Men, we don't do it so well. So I beg you to love your daughters extravagantly. And I beg you to see it in the people around us, the young people who are dying for just one person to look at them and say, I love you. That's really sometimes all it takes to keep them out of this.
Over to Jean, but before that, like I said, after every session, I'll tell you about a workshop. If you are interested to learn more about how to protect yourself, your kids, anybody, against like porn or whatever happens on the phones, there will be a workshop on privacy on phones, and to like learn more about this. So I'll just come in at different parts and I'll tell you what workshop we're offering. So that's one, so keep that in your mind. You'll have a chance to sign up for 3. So I'm gonna switch it over to Jean.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, my name is John, and so I'll give you a little bit of background on who I am and what kind of work history I have, because some of the stuff will be kind of painted with that work history. So at one point, I was a police officer for 7 years, from 2004 to 2011. And then after that, I started working as an analyst. So some of the things we'll talk about today will kind of be painted with that background in my mind. And I'm happy to address some of these things as we're talking. One of the worst things about pornography is the fact that pornography or sex trafficking or trafficking, human trafficking in general, is that we don't recognize that it's happening, right? So before we go any further, I think it's important for us to kind of take a minute just to stand and say, Have I seen it? Have I seen it around me? Is it happening here in Chicago? Is it on my street? Is it in the mall that I go to? So we'll look at a couple of these signs, and we'll figure out how to recognize it.
They mow our lawns and vacuum our offices, paint our nails, and paint our houses. They are in the room next door, or the house next door. They're in strip malls where anyone can see them, but most of us don't. Because most of us don't know where to look. Until now. In 2017, Polaris analyzed one of the largest human trafficking data sets in the United States. We took the broad concepts of sex trafficking and labor trafficking and broke them down into what they really are: criminal operations within 25 distinct businesses. Now, we know where to find them. Now we can start to understand how they got there, how traffickers work, how the businesses are run. Now we know. Now we end it.
Sorry, technical trafficking or technical difficulties. So let's first talk about what increases the possibility of vulnerability, right? So as you're looking at our community, think to yourself, do I notice areas where there's a little bit more poverty than others? And we'll see why that's important, right? Do I know of areas where there's a lack of education? I'll give you an example. When I was working as a police officer, I worked in an area called Prince George's County, Maryland. Prince George's County, Maryland, during the time I worked there, was the 5th worst county crime-wise. So a lot of parents didn't care to educate their kids, right? They were either on drugs, they were doing something else, and the kids were just running the street. Very, very easy location for human traffickers and sex traffickers to find new victims, right? There's no education, there's poverty, definitely an unstable family environment, right? If you don't have a mom and dad that are paying attention to you, that are spending time with you, that are having dinner with you, you know, you don't really exist in their life just because they're called mom and dad. The last one is immigration status. So a lot of times when we think about sex trafficking and labor trafficking, the first thing we think about are people coming across our southern border, okay? Now that is true, but it is not the only way, right? That is true, but it is not the only way. So I don't want there to be like an image in your mind of someone that's sex trafficked, right? If we say sex trafficking, what kind of images come through your mind? Do you guys think of like a 6'2" blonde girl with blue eyes? Not really, right? Like sex trafficking, and especially if I tell you that it happens a lot at like parlors, like massage parlors, now what image is coming to your mind? What's a sex trafficker? Or what's a sex trafficked woman? Filipino woman, right? An Asian woman. But there is no color or look to a sex trafficked person or to a labor traffic. If I say labor traffic in America, what's the first look that comes into your mind? Don't be embarrassed. Mexicans, right? Hispanic people. You're like, oh, it must be the Mexicans. It's not just the Mexicans, okay? There's a lot of people that are labor trafficked and sex trafficked. And I'm being like facetious in how open I am in saying these things because I do want you to recognize that there's built in our minds these presuppositions of who is being trafficked. But the reality is, it could be my next door neighbor who's African American, or it could be my next door neighbor who's white with blue eyes, right? Like there is no look for a sex or a labor trafficked person. Sure, please. Okay.
Please use this. From Ukraine. I can tell you right now that there are people from Ukraine being trafficked.
Oh, without a doubt.
I was teaching, and this one woman was telling me like what her job was, and I'm like, you better get out of there. That doesn't sound too, I don't know what happened because we stopped class. She just didn't want to have class anymore. So I can tell you right now, the Ukrainians are being trafficked.
I can tell you actually for sure, Ukrainians are being trafficked, and I agree with you, because as the war happened between Russia and Ukraine, a lot of the Ukrainians that left Ukraine and went into Europe, they started being trafficked in Europe, labor trafficked and sex trafficked in Europe, and then taken overseas here to the US, right? So that is very true. And Ukrainians are usually blonde, blue eyes, white, right? They don't look like what we think of. We'll focus a little bit more on a couple of populations that are more vulnerable just by fact of who they are and what their, what the sex trafficker looks at. So women and girls, right, easier to be sex trafficked. They are more valuable as sex trafficked victims. You'll see that men and young men are maybe a little bit more in the labor trafficked category as well. Children in general. And I know this sounds horrible, but the reality is evil is evil. It doesn't distinguish between adults and children. And actually, as a matter of fact, evil prefers kids a little bit, right? Because if I can destroy you as a child, there's, it's a lot easier than if I have to wait to destroy you as an adult. So children are like a population that's really vulnerable to this. We already talked about migrant workers. Indigenous people and minorities, right? Those are people that are usually economically disadvantaged at the beginning of their time here in America. And if you are a trafficker, you can almost like spot somebody who's economically disadvantaged. And now you know how to enter. Now you know where to go to, right? And then individuals with disabilities, a lot of times these are mental disabilities because they can't really speak for themselves. They can't really talk about what's happening. They don't really even understand. They just know something is wrong, but they can't verbalize it. They can't explain it. And traffickers know that. And they know that it's harder, that if this was to go to court, it's going to be more difficult to prove that something evil was happening, right? Because the victim themselves cannot advocate for themselves. So just a couple of different populations for us to keep in mind as we're thinking about what we should look for. What should our eyes be able to distinguish? So where do traffickers exist? So we're going to talk about these 4 categories really quickly, but I just want you to keep in the back of your minds, traffickers exist everywhere, right? They're in the mall, they're in the grocery store. Brian told us about somebody who got trafficked right out of a ball game. So there's general understandings that we should be aware of, and then we're just going to talk about these 4 specific categories. So first is the foster care system. Why do you guys think the foster care system is a great recruiting ground for traffickers? Broken homes. You get full control. There's no one doing what for these kids? No one loving them, no one advocating for them, no one looking out for them, right? So they're there, they're easy pickings, right? Same thing, runaways and homeless youth. Same thing, right? Families are not in the picture. No one is showing them love. No one is advocating for them. No one is taking care of them. This is really important as we think about our homes, right? Because it's important that our kids at home are loved, taken care of, and advocated for when they come and tell us certain things. We should never brush off anything. We should never act like we don't understand what they're saying. We should never not believe them. So it's these 3 things that really matter: love, taken care of, and being advocated for. Online and social media. So today, that's probably the biggest one, right? Why? Why is that the biggest one? Why does that matter so much today? Easy access to the victims, right? There's no in between, right? A child or a person is in their room, no one knows what's happening. They're just their eyes, the screen, and then relationships start getting built, trust starts getting built over time. So just online, just in the real online that we deal with, there's 4 porn websites for every regular website. And that's the above ground websites. Then there's the dark web, which none of us really ever visited, I hope not. But in the dark web, that's even a much higher. It's almost like a 30-to-1 thing happening on the dark web. And on the dark web, it's not just pornography, it's all kinds of stuff, right? Does anybody here know what the dark web is by any chance? One person? Two people? 4 or 5 people? Has anybody heard of the dark web? As a red room? I don't know what is a red room. So on the dark web, there's websites that specialize in whatever you want, right? Do you want to see a child being murdered? There's websites that do that, right? They'll kidnap a kid, they'll kill him, and you'll pay to watch the video. And I'm just giving you some of watching a child being murdered is actually not the worst thing on the dark web. So this is like the easy part. Like there's things that are even worse. So the online space has created a safe haven for darkness, right? The websites that we know, and then the dark web itself. It's important for us here in this church, in this community, for a very simple reason. Who here has children? I do. By the way, I have 2 girls. Very good. Who here has children that has cell phones? Who here has children that has cell phones that have internet access? Who here checks every website their kids go to? One hand went up, and I actually doubt her a little bit, but it's okay, Mish. So it's important to understand how the internet works and how there's evil lurking. Like, imagine if I told you, hey, listen, there's a murderer at the door of your house. Would you just go to sleep? Like, would you be comfortable? Would you just close your eyes and go to bed? Like, if I told you there is a real monster, not a boogie monster, there's a real monster under your kid's bed, you wouldn't stop, right? Like, you would try to fetch this monster, you would try to save your child. But we don't think of the access online and social media as that when it truly is, right? And then there's labor markets. Labor markets are huge, right? So there is movements of humans all around the world. People get moved in containers, people get moved in shipping boats all over. China to Europe, Europe to America, America back to China. Like, people movement around the world in the sex and labor trafficking categories is bigger and more profitable than drugs and weapons put together. So I want you to understand that. Like, we really worry about drugs, we really worry about weapons coming in and out of the country. Human trafficking, whether sex or labor, is more profitable than both of them put together. And the simple reason is, I can sell you a gun once, I can sell you some heroin once, but I can definitely sell you a human multiple times, right? The average sex-trafficked woman has sex forcibly 7 to 10 times a day. So I've just sold this person 10 times a day, and they last about 7 years. And after 7 years, they literally expire. Their brain just shuts down, right? So it's a very, very big industry, if that's what you want to call it. All right, so we'll go through a really quick example of what it could look like, right? Daniel is a 16-year-old boy who recently moved from the U.S. to the U.S. from Egypt with his family. Daniel comes from a poor family in Egypt, so they came here, and mom and dad are working very hard to establish a home for themselves. Well, Daniel feels like he does not have a lot of money. He does not have really nice clothes. He does not have the newest iPhone like all his friends do, and his parents can't really afford it. And because Daniel is a good guy, he wants to help out. So he meets Uncle Samir. Is there any Samirs here? No Samirs? Okay, he meets Uncle Samir. And is there a Samir in this? I mean, I'm sure there's a Samir in this church. We are not talking about that guy. There's a different Uncle Samir. He meets an Uncle Samir, and Uncle Samir tells him, Daniel Habibi, I have a job for you, and I really need help in my restaurant. And Daniel goes, oh, great, Uncle Samir. And he tells his family, and his family is like, oh, Uncle Samir, it's a great guy. Go work for him, right? Daniel goes and works for Uncle Samir, and the first few weeks, it's great. Daniel's working 30, 40 hours a week. He's getting paid for every hour. He's coming home. He's really excited. But then Samir decides to tell Daniel, I need you to work for 50 hours. Well, Daniel thinks, I'm going to work for 50 hours. That must mean I'm going to get paid for 50 hours. Unfortunately, that's not what Samir has in mind. Samir knows that Daniel and his family entered here through the southern border. So they don't have paperwork. So Samir says, after the first week Daniel works 50 hours, Daniel only gets paid for 40. Daniel goes and asks Samir, Uncle Samir, how come I didn't get paid for 50 hours? Uncle Samir goes, Habibi, you don't have papers. You should just be thankful that I paid you for 40 hours. Well, the next week, Uncle Samir makes him work 65 hours, and then 70 hours, and then 80 hours. But somehow, Daniel is only getting paid for 40 hours because Uncle Samir knows that Daniel has no papers. So when Daniel goes and complains to Uncle Samir says to him, "Inta walad qalil al-adab." You are rude. You should be more than thankful that I gave you a job. If you try to quit, I'm going to call ICE on you and your family, and we're going to deport all of you. So of course, Daniel is a good boy, so he doesn't want his family to get in trouble. So he just keeps working and keeps working. But he never gets paid for more than 40 hours, if he's lucky. Now, thank God there's nobody called Samir here. But here's the reality about Daniel and Uncle Samir. Daniel and Uncle Samir exist in many churches, Egyptian churches. And they exist in many other places around the country, the United States, right? Whether you're Mexican coming from the southern border, or whether you're Egyptian coming from the southern border, or whether you're anywhere coming from any border, if you come illegally into the country, there's a lot of predators out there that are ready to take advantage of you. And just because you don't have paper doesn't mean you're not human, but in their eyes, you're not human, right? So why is Daniel's story important? Because as a community, تفضل يا بونا. Sure.
80 hours, whatever, and I'll pay you, but I'll pay you zibala. Like, I'll pay you, and it's the same.
$6 an hour rather than
yeah, but I'll justify it that I'm paying you a salary, but I'm paying you like nothing, you know?
Absolutely, that also happens. You know, when I first joined LTJ, I said, what makes something labor trafficking and what makes something not labor trafficking? And what makes something labor trafficking is the threat, the coercion, the false promises, right? I could be a bad person. I don't want to pay somebody. But I'm not a trafficker until they don't have a way out. I'm not a trafficker until I broke the false promises that I gave. I'm not a trafficker until I threaten or try to hold their papers or not allow them to leave. And believe it or not, that happens often, okay? So in our communities, it's important to understand how to see people. When you see someone who is doing just fine physically, and all of a sudden, they're getting sick all the time. All of a sudden, they're tired all the time. I'm not saying everybody that's getting sick or getting tired is trafficked, but we should at least keep our eyes open, right? Don't just assume that everything is fine, because a lot of times it's not. All right, some of these videos we're going to skip, but it's basically talking about exactly what we talked about. We'll stop at familial trafficking, for example. So I know this is kind of like hard to believe, but there's also people that use their own family members, right? There's also people that traffic their own family members. And it's harder to see because when family is trafficking family, it just looks, especially if you're Egyptian, right? Like you have this like thing ingrained in your head, well, I should help my family. Yes, cool, help your family. But are you being coerced into it, right? Are you being trafficked into it? Are you being threatened into it? Like we said, what makes something trafficking is coercion, false promises, and threats and fear, right? So sometimes a home can have a child that is terrified to say no to something that they don't want to do. Believe it or not, that is a form of trafficking, right? So we need to be aware and we need to not call everything by different labels, okay? We're going to move to sex trafficking for a second. I know we've been talking about labor trafficking. Sex trafficking comes in a variety of different ways. And when you think about a sex trafficker, somebody who's going to identify a victim, a lot of times it's not like the movies, okay? In the movies, have you guys ever seen the movie what's the movie, Kidnapped? Taken. Anybody seen the movie Taken? That is like a very Hollywoodish version of what could happen, right? That's like the extreme up here. Somebody gets kidnapped, and now they're like in a house somewhere, half drugged, being used for sex. That's one version. There's a ton of other versions, all the way down to beginning as a boyfriend or beginning as a husband, okay? We met a woman a while ago, and I was chatting with her, and I said, well, how did you get sex trafficked? She said, I got sex trafficked by my husband. I said, how is that even possible? What does that mean? How can a husband sex traffic his wife? And she said, well, we were married for a while, and a little bit into our marriage, we went into like some financial problems. And we just couldn't make ends meet. And one day, my husband asked if I can give his friend a something job, a bad sexual favor. And she said no to her husband, but then her husband said, look, we really need this, right? Because we need to pay this bill and this guy's gonna help us. So she thought, okay, fine, I'm gonna do it for the house. It started there, but it didn't stop. A couple of weeks later, there was another bill that was gonna be due. And another friend of her husband's wanted a different kind of favor. And before she knew it, she was doing favors to keep their house opened. Now, I understand that like in the Coptic church, we're like, oh, this would never happen in our households. This would never happen in the church. Okay, cool. How about this? How about when my daughter goes to the mall, meets a guy, and they like each other, and they're now boyfriend, girlfriend. Of course, we as Coptic families, we don't have such a thing. There's no boyfriend, girlfriend. Okay, cool. But it happens anyway. And then the boyfriend turns out to be somebody that we don't know. We don't understand the family. We don't know where they came from. And they're actually a trafficker that have found a daughter somewhere that looks like she's vulnerable enough. And by the third or fourth date, he puts something in her drink, and she goes to sleep, and she wakes up after being videotaped with 7 or 8 men. And now the question is, will you keep doing this, or I will put this video online? You keep doing this, or I will show the video to your parents. Now, the story I just told you existed, and we met the mother and the girl, and that girl was trafficked for 2 years. And she was being trafficked 2 hours after school every day. About 7 or 8 men every day for 2 years. Parents didn't know, right? Parents just thought it was, a little boy that liked our daughter. It's okay, they're going out to the mall. It's all in a public place. 2 years later, it was a mess. So, a lot of times, sex traffickers, it is not being kidnapped in Europe while you're on vacation. It is you're being met in a mall by a little boy that is identifying my daughter or my son as a possible sex traffic victim.
I find when talking.
A couple of tactics that are common and are used often by the sex traffickers. False promises of love. Why is this one very avoidable by a household? What do we have to do to avoid this? Brian told us about this. What? What did he say? He said there's 3 words that we need to say. I. Ala fikra, if you don't say it, somebody else is going to say it. I. Very good. False promises of love don't affect people who are already loved. False promises of love only affect people who have a gap of love, who are not loved at home, right? So if me as a mom or dad, I am showering my daughter and son with love, I don't really have to worry about them falling for a false promise of love. They're filled already, right? Creating dependency. Sometimes they'll see that this human is broken. This little girl is broken. This little boy is broken. And then they'll go and they'll fix that break for them. and they'll look like their savior. So it's really important that we don't leave our kids broken, that we don't break our kids, right? It's important that we're like in tune with the emotional and mental needs of our kids. The third thing is that they gain their trust, right? Sometimes, let's say, for example, I am very, very harsh with my child. You know, they do something this small that is bad, and my reaction is this big. Well, in that moment of emotional vulnerability, somebody else can step in and build trust with my child, right? And say, oh, don't worry, your parents, I don't know why they do that to you. I don't know why they do that to you. Let me show you a better way. If I was them, I would never treat you that way. And all of a sudden, there's a sense of trust that's being built. And then there's gaslighting. Does anybody know what gaslighting is? Are there any therapists in the church besides Mary? You're a therapist? You know what gaslighting is. What's gaslighting? Are you a fake therapist? You're a fake therapist. You're a therapist in the making? How? Your feelings are not real. Like, come on. You're not really that hurt. Like, somebody says to you, I'm hurt. What you did hurt me. And my response to them is, no, I didn't. You're okay. What I did is that I gaslit their problem. I actually don't know what gaslit means. There has to be like some reason that's what we call it. But what it means is like I am ignoring. Oh, you know too? What is it? Please. Again.
Repeat.
We're going to describe gaslighting one more time, into the mic this time.
Okay, so the term gaslighting comes from back in the day when they used gas lamps. The story goes there was a husband and a wife, and the husband would turn the gas lamp a little bit so it gets a little darker. And then she goes like,
you turned it money.
For whatever reason, to drive her
That's
crazier. And she says, you turned it down. And he goes like, no, I didn't. And then he turns it back on. And he keeps doing that. And that's the term gaslighting because the lighting of the gas lamp goes down.
All right. So it's one person trying to convince the other that what they're experiencing is not real. It's really what it comes down to, right? And that's a problem because no matter how much you tell me that what I'm experiencing is not real, my experience is mine. So if somebody gaslights me enough, I'll go find somebody who doesn't, right? It's really important because a lot of times our kids, I have two daughters, one 15 years old and one 13 and a half years old. When they come home and they have a problem, if I'm not in the mood to listen, I might like downgrade their problem, right? Oh, Baba, I had such a hard time. Okay, Habibti, badin. What? Or Baba, like this test was really hard. Oh, it's your fault, you didn't study. Okay, but it was still hard. Like, I don't care if it's my fault. Like, that's not the point here, right? So it's important that we don't just sidestep people's problems and their emotions. I'm being told I have 4 minutes. So I think we talked about internet grooming already. And we showed, okay, actually, there's a lot of people here that weren't here yesterday, so I'm going to show this video. Let me set it up for you real quick. The Bark Project is a video about this project that happened where they were trying to figure out how fast is it that adults will approach a child online. Not approach a child to play games with them, okay? This is for sex trafficking, right? So adults online, and this is not the dark web, this is the regular internet that we visit every day. This is regular social media websites like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all these things, okay? So they're setting this up to see how fast it happens. Yes, Abuna? We watched it yesterday in the church. Yes. If it's not appropriate today, we can stop. All right.
I never thought I would be chasing child predators. It was 2 years ago when I started conversations between a 12-year-old was abusing her, coercing her, collecting images and videos, and no one in her life, her parents, sixth grade teacher, or friends, knew what was happening. I have a sixth grader of my own. I have 3 kids, actually, but you don't have to be a parent to be devastated by this. I work for a tech company that uses artificial intelligence to detect issues like grooming and sexual predation, and this is something we see constantly. These abuses are occurring quietly and mostly go unreported, and we want parents to know exactly what we know about what happens online. So we made a plan.
A man has been arrested for allegedly raping a 15-year-old that he met over Snapchat.
Instagram has become the #1 social media site.
At the top of the free download.
We're also seeing firsthand the predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat.
We would create a fictitious 15-year-old girl, complete with a believable social media identity, put her online, and document how long it would take for a predator to approach her. But creating a person out of thin air is complicated. We needed photos, but we knew we couldn't use an actual teenager. It would have to be someone on our team. I'm 37, but our graphic designers assured me that with the wonders of photo manipulation, they could magically make me look over 2 decades younger. We bought clothes and accessories, studied body language and facial expressions. We methodically covered and edited signs of aging, wrinkles, weight shifts, and stretch marks. Meanwhile, we coordinated with federal, state, and local law enforcement. Then we built a story around her, a history, a family, a social circle. Libby was born in 2004 and is a sophomore who recently moved to Indiana. We created multiple online accounts for Libby, prominently displayed her age, and posted typical teen content. We even created virtual friends for Libby who would comment on her posts. With everything in place, we would launch the project, give it a few months, and see if anyone would buy it. So we hit the button, and Libby went live. Within the first hour,
Not working. Okay, I'm trying. Sorry, how old is Libby? 15, right? So they created Libby out of thin air. She's 15 years old. Within the first hour, tens and tens of men started asking her for sexual favors. And she says clearly on her site, I am 15 years old. Like, there's no mistake on who Libby is online.
conversations ranged in severity from making sexual comments to sharing and requesting explicit photos and videos to manipulation and threats. The onslaught was so massive, it took 5 of us playing Libby full-time to keep up. We decided to move off-site where we could scale up the operation and gather as much information and evidence as possible. Since Libby is 15, men might try to falsely justify their actions towards her because of her proximity to adulthood. Would parents question, where's the bar? Would a 13-year-old face the same barrage of predators? A 12-year-old? How young could it possibly go? The graphics team transformed me into 11-year-old Bailey. Bailey is afraid of the dark. She hasn't had her first crush yet. She's still prepubescent. A parent might assume Bailey would be insulated from any sort of predatory attack. We launched our 11-year-old persona online.
444 and go. One like from a guy whose profile photo is a penis.
So let's say 1 minute, 7 seconds. We have a message request.
Although this is alright, 2 more requests just came in. How much time? A minute, 40 seconds?
Yeah.
How old are you?
How old is she now? 11. And it took 1 minute and 40 seconds for adult men to start messaging her. All right, I think we're good. You get the point, right? Yes? Do we need the rest of the video? Yeah, no, we don't. But that's the point, right? Is the online environment is not exactly a safe environment. So my humble request for you as parents, which is something I do at home as well, is that you really have to be aware of what is on your children's phones. It can't be without limit. It can't be without checking. It can't be, oh, they have to have what other people have. It's up to you. But this is real. This is not a made-up video, right? A 15-year-old and an 11-year-old and they put up regular pictures. They didn't put up like sexy pictures of themselves. They just put up like children pictures. And it was like that, okay? All right, we're gonna do this really quick activity. And I just want you to understand, because sometimes we think, well, why can't people just get out of it, right? Like, why is it a big deal? Like, let's say somebody makes a mistake, why can't they just walk out? It should be simple, right? I'm gonna ask you guys to take some of these papers and pass them around. Tant, we're going to start with you. You're going to hold this, and then you're going to hold this. No, hold that part. And then Bidik, then you hold this part. Okay, so where's the other mic? All right. So Tant, you're going to read what's on your paper, and then after that, you're going to hold the one edge, the one edge in your right hand. No, listen. You're going to hold the edge on your right hand. You're not going to let go of that one. Then you're going to take the other ball, and you're going to throw it to the next person we're going to say. So it's going to go, but you're holding your edge. Don't let that edge go.
Hold on to this,
okay?
And you throw this.
All right, very good. Go ahead.
Pretending to be romantic partner or rescuer.
Pretending to be a romantic partner and rescuer. All right, somebody back there, raise your hand. Wait, no.
Okay, next.
Somebody else?
Okay.
All right. Find it and read yours.
No, it's yours.
حافظة مش فاهمة معلش.
First, you have to hold the string so you don't lose it. We're trying to create a web, if you want to know what it is. Just to help you out.
There you go.
Okay, gaslighting, make the victim question reality.
Gaslighting.
Now throw this
All right,
to
now hold one edge and throw the ball.
Throw it. Oh.
All right, keep holding your edge. Everybody keep holding your edge. Don't let go of your piece of the string. All right, next person.
Using the debt unfairly to keep control.
Hold on to this. Okay.
Can we say that one again?
It's about the debt control. Like you owe somebody money and debt control.
So I owe a lot of money and now they control me.
I'm gonna throw
All right,
here.
let's throw it in the front
That's
a little
it.
bit.
Yeah.
Just keep holding onto your edge. Keep holding onto your edge. Don't let it go.
Gradually desensitization the victim to abuse.
Gradually desensitizing the victim to abuse, right? So little by little, you don't realize you're being abused.
Yeah.
Can we throw it here? Like up here, this way. Yep, throw it. There you go. Very nice.
Okay, now give.
The paper. I don't have a paper. Hey, that's okay.
One paper.
Okay. Making them report their every move.
Say that again. Making them report their every move. Very good. Let's cut it this way. Hold your edge and cut it this way somewhere.
Give me and throw the other part to somebody else.
This way. Throw it that way.
It's supposed to be across.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
Restricting movement, locked rooms, constant surveillance.
Constant surveillance, locking the rooms, and restricting movement. Okay, now hold your edge and throw it back that way.
Hold yours.
Hold
this.
your edge.
Hold this, and then throw that.
Hold your edge. There you go.
Here, behind you, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Creating financial dependency.
Creating financial dependency. Hold your edge and throw it back behind you to that corner.
Opposite, or somewhere.
Give it to Michelle.
All right, somebody get the nice lady a mic. Here we go.
Applying drugs or alcohol to create independency.
Applying drugs or alcohol to create dependency. There you go, I like it. That is a good throw. Best throw all day so far.
Using weapons or making verbal threats.
Using weapons or making verbal threats, so fear, right? Let's bring it back behind you one more. There we go. Hold your edge, nobody lose your edge.
Okay, do you have a paper? I don't. Okay, can we borrow one? Okay, we just borrowed one. Here you go.
بنحاول.
Forcing victims to work off fabricated debts.
All right, now let's bring it all the way up here to Abuna.
Throw it all the way to the front.
Throw it. Let's see. Can you bring it to the front?
There has to be some stuff in the middle.
There you go. It's almost there. All right, almost there.
Where am I going?
A little bit more. All right, Abuna's going to be the last one to read for us.
All right. Controlling who the victim can talk to.
Controlling who the victim can talk to. Okay, everybody that has a piece of string in their hand, don't let it go. Now raise it all the way up. All the way up. Okay, this is why people can't get out of it, right? Because traffickers are smart. They don't just do one thing to control you, they build an intricate weave of a variety of things. And even if I come and I cut a piece of it, the other piece of the weave will still continue. So if I put you on drugs, and I threaten your family, and over time I took all your friends away, and over time you don't have a relationship with your family, I can't just break out by taking one of these pieces off. Okay, you can put your hands down, right? So you have to understand that traffickers are very, very smart criminals. Just so we're clear, human traffickers and sex traffickers are just as difficult, if not more difficult to catch than drug dealers and weapons dealers. And you would think that there's a human victim, they should be able to talk to the crime that happened to them. But the sense of fear and threat that's inside of them, they don't talk. And that's why over 80% of victims are never reported. These crimes are not reported. Very small percentage of them are. And Brian mentioned something, and I'll mention it as well. A lot of police officers, when I was a police officer, I had never really dealt with sex trafficking or labor trafficking before. What I did do is I arrested some prostitutes. And in my mind was, she's a prostitute, she should be arrested, right? It never linked back beyond her. It wasn't in my mind that she's being trafficked by someone. So it's also hard when the system itself doesn't always train the guardians of the system to take care of those people. So I say all that, and then we're going to wrap up. A couple of important things. You have to be able to change how your eyes see. Okay? Do not make assumptions. Do not prejudge that someone caused themselves to be in a situation. And don't assume that because they look a certain way or don't look a certain way, it couldn't be happening to them. Just because they speak Arabic and they come to church doesn't mean they're not being sex trafficked. Doesn't mean they're not being labor trafficked. Just because they're white, blonde eyes, or blonde hair, blue eyes, doesn't mean they're not labor trafficked or sex trafficked. Sounds good? All right. Yes? I'm going to give you a quick answer, but we're actually going to go into a whole section that's going to talk about what is available to any kind of victim, okay? Believe it or not, no matter what situation you're in, going to law enforcement would never make it worse, okay? I know some people are worried like, oh, I'm going to be deported. First of all, nobody really gets deported. Like, it's very, very rare, right? Like, seriously, like, if you guys know how hard it is to deport people, even now, under Trump, I get it, we think they all get deported like that. That's not real. Okay? Like, you would have to be yourself a criminal. And if you're being trafficked, I promise you the US will offer you safe haven. They will not deport you. Okay? So if you're being trafficked, sex or labor, or if you know somebody who's trafficked, sex or labor, I promise you, take them and have them come and report it. Reporting is the first base. If you don't report it, nothing happens, right? So reporting is really important. And when it comes to like threats, some people are threatening bodily harm against their families back home, okay? I can't promise you that that's not gonna happen to their family, but at the end of the day, just remember that traffickers also don't want media. Like, they don't want media. They don't want something that is going to make a big splash. So the last thing they want is to start murdering people and law enforcement to be involved, okay? So a lot of times the threats are empty, but you can't make that promise, but you can at least help them be courageous to take that first step.
Thank you, John. Okay, so with what he just talked about, the two workshops that relate is there's a workshop on the cycle of exploitation, like the steps that take place to trafficking. You get to look at real cases and look at the steps. That's one workshop. And there's another workshop, actually, no, that's for the next part. Okay, that's it, that's that one workshop. So far there is the one about porn and protecting the privacy on your phones. And then the second one is the steps of trafficking. With that, we're about to take a really short break. We're gonna do a 10-minute break. During this break, if you would like to check out our table outside, we have some books. One of our books is a book that our own team came up with. It's a book of small like devotionals, and you can use it for anybody who's going through something. It's about just processing like different things, different emotions. So that's a devotional. It's like a little quiet time thing. It has a journal. There's other books that were written by our beloved Isaac, if you want to check that out. And then there's also like other like little gifts like necklaces, magnets, so if you want to check out any of that. But we're going to take a 10-minute break. Please come back at 1:57. 1:57? Yes.
Not 8.
I was going to say 55.
Where are we supposed to go for our yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. We'll figure it out. Okay.